Hey guys, welcome back to Extremely Annoyed. Bye. Yo, the amount of times that these people have been expelled from country to country is unbelievable. Talk about Jews, right? It's like it's so many times. It's like basically, I mean, you could sum it up to Leonardo DiCaprio getting dates, like dating a 20 years old and waiting until she's 25 and then dumping her over and over and over. That's what it is, really. It's similar to that. It's unfortunate. I'm not trying to make fun of it. It's a really unfortunate history that they have. But again, you got to ask yourself why. Because I'm talking about so many countries at so many periods, throughout their history. They've been expelled and thrown out. Even in the promised land, the so-called promised land, they've been thrown out. Now I say the so-called promised land is because I don't think it's promised to them anymore. And I'm gonna give my reasons why in a second. But point being is they were expelled from Spain, from England, from Egypt. Even after the Exodus, they went back to Egypt and they were expelled again, which is crazy. They were expelled from Germany at one point, from France, from all over the country, all over the world. I mean, all over the world. Okay, so it's not funny, but you gotta ask why. And here is why. It is undoubtedly the reason, right? If you search it yourself, they have a tendency to do sneaky shit, right? And I'm not talking about all of them as a whole, but many of them, they try because again, it is due to their belief, and it's not nothing wrong with their belief, whatever it is. I don't care. I don't care. It's wrong. I think it's wrong. It shouldn't be right, but that's their beliefs, and I want to respect it. And that is that they feel like they're entitled to treat goyim like myself and like you, who are non-Jew, as cattle. That's what they believe. That's what is in the Tanakh. That's what is in the Talmud. That we are animals. We are cattle. We are meant to be in servitude to them because they're the chosen people of God, even though that interpretation is actually wrong. And I'm going to give you my reasons again why that is. I'm going to read to understand the whole thing that I'm explaining here now. You got to go back to the Bible. You got to go back to the Torah. So after the Exodus, right, God promised them the Holy Land. He promised the Holy Land, right? And I believe he did. I believe God did and promised them the Holy Land. But when Moses told them what they need to do to get the Holy Land, because during that time, the Holy Land was occupied by the indigenous people of the land, the Canaanites, and they were a kingdom. And God basically said, this is your land. You should go in and fight these people and take the land, right? And what they said to Moses when he broke the news to them, what they said is
12 spies, one for each tribe, so they can scout out the promised land. So when the spies all return, 10 of them say that there is no chance Israel can survive there because the Canaanites will destroy them. But there are 2 spies, Caleb and Joshua, who say that God can save them. But the 10 whip up the people into a fearful rage, and they start planning a mutiny. They're going to appoint a new leader and head back to Egypt. So God is understandably angry, and Moses intercedes on the people's behalf. He calls God to be faithful to his promises to Abraham. And so God does, but not at the expense of his justice. He gives these Israelites what they want, to not enter the land. And God sentences this generation to wander in the wilderness for 40 years until they die. Only their children will get to enter the promised land.
We wish that we had died in Egypt. This is in Numbers 14. This is real. This is in the Bible. This is their history. We wish that we had died in Egypt. I'm sorry for laughing, but it's funny. It's so funny. It's like I'm gonna go into this land and die. I wish I died in Egypt. I mean, what's the point? What would be the difference? Or in the wilderness. What's the point? Okay, this is what they said. What's the point in the Lord bringing us to this land to die by the sword so our wives and children would become war victims? Yeah, it's so funny, man. I swear to God, this is so funny. I'm sorry. This is the Bible. I should be very, very more. I mean, I'm a Muslim. I'm a Muslim, so I'm respectful, and I believe this is has some truth to it. I don't think this is the part that was corrupted. I think this is the word of God, right? Because again, if you don't know about Muslims, we believe that the Bible it was retouched, edited. Some things added in, some things taken out. But I think this part in particular, I think this is actually what happened. And because this is also in the Quran, so that's how we verify it. Well, this is actually what happened. It's in the Quran. This is how we know it's verified, right? It's real. So I got to be respectful. I can't laugh to this, but it was funny the reaction to it. That's really why I was laughing. Is the reaction? Is the it's like they was just freed from Pharaoh, like they were slaves for centuries. And they see all these miracles of God, right? They see how Moses is the messenger of God. He's showing them all these miracles. He split the freaking sea for them so they could cross it to get away from Pharaoh's army to save their lives. And in the head, they're like, bro, what? Why? No, I'm not fighting these people so I could die and my wife and children that died too. Like, no, bro, that's not gonna happen. I wish I would have died in Egypt. I mean, that's not. Anyway, they basically came together then to pick a leader amongst themselves so they could go back to Egypt. That's what this says in the scripture. Anyway, Moses went to God. He spoke to God. He went to the Mount Sinai to speak to God. It's not Moses going to Mount Sinai to meet with God or to speak to God, but actually God himself, according to the scripture, that suddenly the glory of the Lord appeared at the tent of the meeting to all of the Israelis. So basically, the children of Israel, when Moses was breaking the news to them that they need to conquer their land, their promised land, and fight these people that are already on the land, he came to them. Like God supposedly came to them. Okay, so and he said to Moses, "How long will this people keep on spurning me and refusing to trust me?" Now, this is one translation, I guess you could call it. I mean, there's other versions of this. It was really simple. Basically, God said, "How long will these people reject me?" Okay. Anyway, but it says over here that God said, "How long will these people keep on spurning me and refusing to trust me, despite all the miracles that I've done among them?" The Lord asked Moses, "That's why I'm going to attack them." Well, after that, in fact, in other scriptures and other versions, which is why Muslims have a problem with this, because there's so many versions, they're not consistent. There's always something different. In other versions, God, after saying why they never accept me, or why do they insist on rejecting me, he also said, why don't they? When are they gonna believe in me? Anyway, in this version, he skips that. He says, "That's why I'm going to attack them with pestilence and disinherit them. Instead, I'll make you a great nation, even mightier than they are." So he disinherits the children of Israel. So they go for 40 years, and 40 years in the wilderness, they lost for 40 years, right? Until their children grow up, and there's a whole different generation who do believe in Moses, who do believe in God, because they were, indoctrinated in the belief, and they believe in God so heavily. And this is the great nation that God created. This is the chosen people, and chosen by what means? Chosen in the means of that they are meant to do God work, like going into the land, conquering the land, making a holy land. Right, a holy land. I don't know how else to describe it. To make a holy land dedicated and worshiping God. Right, that's the best way I can describe it. And to spread God's words. That's why they were chosen. Right. Again, is clearly they were disinherited because they rejected God. The people that occupy in Palestine right now, they're not the children of Israel. In fact, I can bet money, if I have any, that the white Jews, most of them, are in no way related to Jacob, the prophet of God. no way related, have no connection to children of Israel. That's why DNA testing is illegal. That's why they can't prove it. Like, they are Caucasus people. They're from the mountains of Caucasus. They have no relations to the prophets of God. These white European people, the very people that founded Zionism, right? These very people who declared that, Israel, Palestine is theirs to conquer, is theirs. By the way, here's the thing. I mean, the history. They went to Palestine as refugees. Palestinians accepted these people as refugees to protect them from prosecution, and they stabbed them. That's their history. That's why they're always expelled, because they keep backstabbing the societies they live in, the communities they live in. They always trying to find a way, like, to control the economy. They always, charge people a large amount of interest, or they steal from the goyim, from the Gentiles, because they think they have that right to do it. They can't steal from each other, from a Gentile, because they're cattle, because they were meant to be in servitude to them. It's fine to treat them whatever way they want.
Jacob Fauci is an American Israeli. He became infamous after Mona confronted him and the video went viral.
Jacob, this is not your house.
Yes, but if I go, you don't go back. So what's the problem? What are you yelling at me? I didn't do this.
You are stealing my house.
And if I don't steal it, someone else is going to steal it.
No one is allowed to steal it, ya ammi.
He's been living in an additional part of Mona's house for over 10 years after being recruited by a US-based company called Nahalat Shimon International, which owns the property under Israeli law.
How did you end up here?
It's a long story. Basically, I needed to...
This is a fact. This is not me being anti-Semitic. I'm Semitic myself. You could go search this yourself. They use this word anti-Semitic or insensitive to the Holocaust, which has nothing to do with the freaking argument that I'm making. Like things like that to throw you off. Like, oh my God, you're such a piece of anti-Semitic, whatever. Like, it's just attack after attack. But it's not fooling anybody anymore. People are doing their own research. People are actually, looking at the information and coming to their own conclusions that, in fact, Israel was never meant to exist. They killed people, Palestinians, displaced hundreds of thousands of Palestinians, killed hundreds of thousands of Palestinians, burned their villages, stole their land, and still are doing it to this day. This was not there's no fucking denying that. That's history. That is a fact. And it's documented history. And not only is it documented by other sources, but by Zionists. They documented their atrocities.
It's very clear that Plan Dalet was a plan not just to take over, but to empty of their population all of these villages and cities. Now, were there people who understood that writing down on paper, we will expel this population, was probably not a wise thing to do? Yes. But was there a clear intention implemented to the letter to expel the populations? And more importantly, not to let them return? There was.
The most important part of Plan D was the set of orders that came outside of Plan D. The orders were strikingly clear and unambiguous and used the word letaher in Hebrew, which is to cleanse, or to destroy, which is lehashmid, or to expel, which is legaresh. I think the role of the historian is to fuse these military orders with the plan itself, and then you get an idea of the intention and the implementation.
They literally, Haganah documented that they unprovokedly attacked Palestinian villages so they can start to create this Israeli state, this terrorist state, right? They literally unprovoked, and it's ironic. The Holocaust and what they went through, very similar, really, really similar to what's going on to the Palestinians. It's unbelievable. Anyway, so that is their history, bro. It's like that's who they are. It's like they can't fight it. They've been expelled from country after country because they can't help but backstab or try to control them in any way. And that's the facts about it. It's like what you gotta do, right? Anyway, I want to get into something else as well. Like real quick, when the Jews were expelled from the Holy Land for the third time by the Romans in 49 AD, and they weren't allowed to get back during the occupation of their land by the Roman Empire for centuries. So they migrated like they did before, mainly in Arabic countries or regions, Arabic regions, because there was no real country. It was just regions, right? Like communities spread out through the Arabian Peninsula. Um, and also they migrated to Ethiopia, to Persia, and other places in the world. Anyway, point being is they wasn't allowed to enter the Holy Land for so many freaking years, right? Until the Muslims conquered the land from the Romans. And when the Khalifa, the leader of the Muslims, the prince or Amir al-Mu'mineen, Umar al-Khattab radiallahu anh, when he entered the Holy Land and saw there was no Jews there, he was very upset. He was like, well, why is there any Jews here? Invite the Jews back. Tell them that the land has been conquered from the Roman oppressors. Let them come back. You know what they said to him? No. Because they established communities in these other countries, in these other regions. They didn't want to go back to the Holy Land, right? This is a fact. So what Umar, radiallahu anh, the leader, leader of the Muslims at that time, what he did is he had to force, because he was so sad that there was no, like in the Holy Land, there's no Jews, there's no children of Israel. He had to force 70 families to enter the Holy and live there, inhabit the Holy Land, right? So at least 70 families come back to the Holy Land, which is why if you look at, for example, like this right here, you can see there was barely any Jews even in the 1800s, right? Like around the 1880s when the Jewish people in Russia, and again, like I said before, I don't think these are real Jews. I think this is just, Caucasoids. This is white people from who are descendants from Khazar who converted to Judaism to avoid being at war with Christians and Muslims at that time, because Muslims and Christians were fighting, the Romans and the Islamic Caliphate. So to avoid in being in the conflict and choosing a side, they decided to convert into Judaism, which is why they were always in Europe. I mean, let me because I don't want to digress and just miss my point entirely. Just a real quick side note. Why would the Jews migrate towards the very people who are prosecuting them? You know what I'm saying? Because it's obvious that they were either black or dark skinned or both. They were never fully white at the time they were expelled by the Romans at 49 AD. So when they were expelled, they wouldn't go towards the Roman Empire and be prosecuted and killed and imprisoned and enslaved. So the Khazar were already white and they converted to Judaism, right? Which is why they are not Jews. They're just converts of Judaism, right? They're not related to Jacob in any way. So anyway, back to the point. In the 1880s, around the 1880s, the Jewish people in Russia were being prosecuted by the Russians. So the Palestinians and the Ottomans invited them to migrate towards the Holy Land, and not only in the Holy Land, but anywhere in the Arabian Peninsula. But they, a lot of them came to the Holy Land. They came to Palestine, and it was still 5%. That's how little they were, in the Holy Land in Palestine. There were only 5%, and they increased by the years because of the prosecution they were experiencing in Europe. In Europe, by Europeans, by Christian Europeans, not by Muslims, not by Arabs, by Europeans. Muslims protected them for centuries. They were safe in Muslim countries. For centuries, they were safe under the Islamic Caliphate. And in fact, like I said before, Muslims are the ones who invited them back to the Palestine, and they refused. They rejected it. Most of them, and a large majority of them. Like I said, only 70% that were forced to come back. 70 families, excuse me, that were forced to come back to Palestine. All right, it's crazy, man. It's really, when you look at history, you find the truth, and you see how desperate these people really are, when trying to alter the truth. They try to alter the history and lie to the people. And these people were embraced by the Palestinians, right, as refugees. They helped them, they taught them, because they were from, Europe, whatever trade they had. And when they came to Palestine, they had to teach them their trade, had to be farmers, like certain things, right? The Palestinians, Muslims or Christians or otherwise, taught them the trade, right? To survive in Palestine. And then they attacked them. They burned down their villages. They burned them alive even at times. They displaced hundreds of thousands of Palestinians. Like indigenous people of the land, indigenous people, they are the descendants of the Canaanites. They are the descendants of the Hebrews, of the Jewish who converted to Islam, Muslims. Because there are many Jews that remained there who weren't Jews by religion, but converted to Christianity. And I don't think they were expelled by, I don't believe they were expelled by the Romans. I think they remained. And only the Jewish people who were prosecuting Christians at the time were expelled. So these same very people who converted to Christianity, who happened to be actual Israelites, then converted to Islam, many of them, and many of them possibly did not. And these, again, this is indigenous to that land, Canaanites, and these same very people who are actual descendants of Jacob, who are being killed and displaced by these new European Jews who really, like I said before, have no real connection to the children of Israel. They are not Jews. They're not Jewish people. They are Jewish by conversion. And as you know, they didn't even know the language, the Hebrew language. Many Jews, like in Yemen and in Ethiopia, they had the Hebrew language, right? They had whoever founded Zionism had to come to the Arabian Peninsula to gather information about the Hebrew language, the Hebrew language, so he could teach his people in Europe, the Jewish people over there, to speak it, because they forgot the language. They even forgot many of the practices of Judaism. It's really funny. Like, you could clearly see these people had no right. And even if they were actual children of Israel, they still had no right, because these are godless people. Like it states in Numbers 14, these are the people that God disinherited. They are not the children of God. They are not the children of Israel. These are criminals. Because who would go as a refugee, escaping prosecution to someone's land, and then claiming that it's theirs, and killing those people who embraced them and protected them? Who would do that other than criminals?